We've really been talking a lot about coaching skills over the last few sessions, and we're going to continue that trend. We're going to talk a little bit about how coaches in the athletic world really coach athletes to play their positions and why these specialist skills are so essential and how that translates to the startup world for you. When we talk about specialists and coaching specialists, it makes a lot of sense from an athletic lens. This is Tom Brady when he was back with the Patriots. Still a little bitter about that, but that's okay. um, when we are developing specialists in the athletic world, there's a few things that we really look at to determine where individuals are going to end up. Aptitude, predilection, predisposition, disposition, practice, and mastery. These are skills or characteristics that really allow people to pick a certain part of an athletic sport and run with it. A quarterback usually isn't going to be a linebacker. A linebacker, usually it can't be a quarterback. We're looking at very different aptitudes. We're looking at very different predispositions for something. And then what happens is we've got practice. These individuals spend hours and hours and hours practicing their skill set to mastery. And it's really important in these high-performing teams that everybody plays their role to the best of their abilities. This is no different than what you're looking at in the startup world. So let's take a look at the coxswain versus the rower role. I know a lot about that, so I can really connect it to your startup world. But if you look at this, there's 8 rowers, 1 coxswain. And it might seem on first glance that these rowers could move around, they could row any seat, but there is a very specific process to selecting who sits in what seat. Each seat truly is its own specialty. It's critical. It feels different in each seat. The perception, the boat feel, kind of the role that each of these individuals within the 8 plays is very different based on where they're sitting. Imagine that, exactly like you guys. So every seat is truly a specialty and every seat is truly critical. Some individuals that can row the stroke seat, which is the one right in front of the coxswain, very well, cannot row in the middle of the boat and can't follow sometimes. So these positions within this org or this team are really critical and very specific to each individual, even though from the outside, it might look like they're all doing the same thing. And each of them executes independently within this group, which is a really important thing. And so then if you're looking at the coxswain's role, which is very similar to your role, you cannot do their jobs for them. Just like they couldn't do my job as a coxswain. Sometimes they tried to tell me how to do my job, but I'm like, no, like you do yours, I'll do mine. In a really nice way, I would say that. But my job was to lay out the tactics, right? And then their job was to listen to the tactics. My job was to give a collective how, right? And maybe feedback to each individual rower for how to better fit to the flow. But their job is to execute their part to the best of their ability. I'm not technically telling them how to do their job. I'm helping them fit into the group a little bit better. And that is a very important distinction that leaders really across the board need to understand. And I think that from a coxswain to a rower, it's a very specific example. Just for example, like Tom Brady might say, this is the run that we're playing, and this is where the linebacker needs to be, or this is where the wide receiver needs to be. But it's then up to the wide receiver to make sure that they get to that point. And so tips for the startup founder and CEO is to understand that each role that you have is truly a specialty. You might have a broad understanding of all of them, but you're not an expert in each one of them. You might be an expert in one part of it. And so your job truly is to lay out the tactics and then let each person row their seat independently with a little bit of supervision when needed. So how do we do this? How do we coach without controlling? Because this is a very fine line. And we really want to make sure that we're staying on the coaching side, because a really good coach allows people to have autonomy, creativity, ownership, and allows everyone to contribute on a unilateral effort. So that's what we're shooting for, right? So when we lay out a very clear vision or a very clear tactic, we allow our team to reach that vision through their own expertise. We, as the leader, really want to make sure that our overall vision is clear so that they can use their individual expertise to get to our vision. And then that really allows them to tap into their creativity. They can take calculated risks based on their own personal knowledge of their specialty. So when I think about how this relates to coxing, I think about when, as a coxswain, I'm laying out the race plan and I'm, letting the athletes know where we are. And the reason that that's so critical, the reason to lay the plan out is so critical, is that they have so much personal knowledge about their own training and their own capabilities. They know exactly when they can come up 1% and push a little bit harder. And that's up to each individual person, even though we're working within this big unit. I can't get inside that individual's brain in that way to know exactly how metered they are at each individual part of the race. They know that, though, because they're an expert of rowing their seat. And that's where it allows them to take those calculated risks. I call that creativity. And then it allows ownership. If you are allowing them to get to your vision through their expertise and their creativity and taking calculated risks, then they really own their seat and they're able to really do their job to the best of their ability, which is what every person in a team wants to be able to do. And then when you're at that stage, you've got this long unilateral effort. Everyone is cooking at the top and really trying to hit this vision through their creative juices. And so then you're building trust. You have this great energy in your organization and you're building trust through this ability to let them run with their expertise, if that makes sense. So why is this important? Well, for a lot of reasons. But the first reason is there is no superhuman person. You are not a superhuman person as a leader, founder, or a coach. We physically cannot do everyone's jobs. We are not specialists at everything. We might have an overarching understanding, and we definitely have an overarching vision, but we don't know the intricacies of every single seat. And we have to trust that the people that we've placed in those seats do have the expertise to get to your vision. So when you're able to do this, it really reduces the chance of friction between teammates because it's very clear to them that they have the autonomy to do their job. And so you get a lot of less internal coaching of people kind of arguing like, oh, well, I think you should do it this way, or I think you should do it that way. And that's a little bit different than collaboration. Well, being a great teammate and being supportive is a lot different than a teammate telling another teammate, this is how you should do this. And that's one thing that we want to avoid. And by rolling things out this way, by discussing openly with the whole team how each seat is so different and each specialty is so different, it allows each person to kind of truly respect the individual in that seat or in that area of expertise. And then lastly, that truly leads to, well, not lastly, second to last, it leads to better leader team relationships because they truly feel that you trust them. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to make mistakes or that they're not going to still come to you for advice or walk things through with you to make sure that their expertise, their risk-taking, their creativity still lines up with your vision, but it allows them to have ownership of that part. And then lastly, that really importantly contributes to a sense of fulfillment with their job, a sense of fulfillment with what they're being able to contribute to the organization because you trust them to use their expertise and their creativity. and you coach them to do that, and you coach other people within your organization to stick to their own job and do their own job to the best of their ability, you really give everyone the freedom to just do their part. And that might sound super simple, but I think a lot of leaders overlook how critical that actually is when you are a part of a team. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as you sit down and look over your C-suite, think about each one of them as individual specialists that bring something completely different to the table. And although you've got a great insight and a great vision as to where your organization can go, make sure that you're lean on them heavily to help you create or bring to life their part of your vision. I have office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Eastern Standard Time. If those hours don't work for you, feel free to reach out with a little bit of notice. I'm pretty flexible. And I'm here to help you with coaching, founder, CEO coaching, C-suite coaching, and even team coaching within the org. Thanks so much. Have a great day.